think one of the tough things for a lot of people is if you work in an office job or, you work a normal corporate job, you get used to being inside a lot. You get used to being indoors. You get used to leaving your house, going directly to your office, staying there, maybe going outside for lunchtime, going back in your office, then going back home, maybe going inside because maybe you have to do stuff with the kids and it's tough. But I think for a lot of people, what they'll find is if they start trying to make a diligent effort to get outside, even if it feels like a little bit of a headache, they'll naturally start to feel a little bit better. And then they'll naturally start to seek that. Just like when you start eating better, when you start eating whole foods from eating a processed diet, you start naturally gravitating towards eating those foods because you're like, wow, this makes me feel better. If you make a concerted effort to get outside in the morning, get outside whenever you can, you'll start to seek that more. And at this point for me, I'm at a point where I don't like being in here. I love podcasting. Don't get me wrong. I love doing this. But once we're done here, I go straight outside.
Today's show with Mark Bell and Nsima Inyang is brought to you by our friends over at bondcharge.com. We actually talk about some of their great products in the podcast, such as the Blackout Sleep Mask. But I want to tell you more about their PEMF mat, which stands for Pulsed Electromagnetic Field Therapy. This is a really unique device that can improve your sleep, recovery, energy, and focus. And in my opinion, it's great for soft tissue injury recovery. I recently strained my back, and I've been relying upon the PEMF mat to help improve my ability to get back to my normal routine that I depend upon, my fitness routine specifically, because being hurt totally sucks. And I have been pleasantly surprised at how the precious gemstones paired with the technology in this mat, how it helps you feel so calm and helps alleviate some of the muscle strain and improve your sleep. So PEMF therapy has been used for a long time for a range of different conditions. You can go to Google Scholar or PubMed and learn a little bit more about this. But what I love about the Bond Charge mat is it's really well built. This mat is heavy because of all these gemstones, and it also has near infrared and far infrared light therapy built into it. So you're getting a lot of different modalities paired into one. And of course, Bond Charge takes a really big focus and attention into making sure that it's low and non-native EMF, electromagnetic frequencies that can compromise your health. So this mat you can use before bed or after exercise to help accelerate soft tissue injury recovery, to feel more calm, rested, and to support your sleep. So you can go to bondcharge.com/HIH to learn more about this mat and the many other tools that Bond Charge makes. Again, that URL that I'll link in the description below is bondcharge.com/HIH to save on the new PEMF mat and a range of other health promoting tools. So let's cut back to it with Mark Bell and Nsima Inyang.
We get a little grumpy if we don't get some exercise in.
Oh, I love that. I mean, the idea of exercise snacks, Mark and Nsima, it's great to have you back on. What's cool is practitioners are ahead of the science. You guys have been promoting exercise snacks as a tool for enhancing fat loss, supporting metabolic health. Let's talk about how that started. You and Stan started doing these 10-minute walks, and now we have tons of literature showing that's helpful.
Yeah, I think the 10-minute walk was something that was just low-hanging fruit, very easy to do. Jesse Burdick is another person that recommended that I walk when I was super fat. Remember that?
Yes. Yes. 3:30.
Yeah, 3:30 was the heaviest, and my cardio back then was just to go on a walk. And then Stan and I were communicating about some of the stuff. Stan found some research comparing a 10-minute walk with metformin, and the 10-minute walk was shown to be better. Frequent 10-minute walks was better than like one just 30-minute walk or one hour walk or something like that. So I just felt like, oh, that's easy for me to keep into the routine. And I started doing it a long time ago, and it helped me go from 330, which now I'm down to 220. So there's been some huge progress there. Obviously, there's been a lot of other intervention. The diet, is a huge one. And nowadays I run, but all of it started with walking.
That's amazing. I want to get into running, but pivot to you, Nsima. I think there's the perception that cardio reduces your muscular strength and hypertrophy. So a lot of people go to the gym, they lift weights, and they don't want to do cardio because it's going to strip away muscle. You do all forms of cardio. We just did a bunch of cardio with resistance training, mixed in there. You did some jump rope and things like that. You roll and do jujitsu. What have you found with this new method of training, blending different exercises, compound movements that are both aerobic and anaerobic? How has that affected your muscle quality? You have a lot of muscle, very physically fit and all that.
Yeah, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for almost a decade now. Wow. So one of the things is when I started, I was afraid that doing a lot of jiu-jitsu was going to make me lose a lot of muscle. And that's not the case. I've pretty much kept the same, if not gained a little bit of lean body mass over the years. What I think is that when people are able to improve their cardio a bit over time, and I think it's better to try to do that gradually rather than trying to just increase your cardio just massively, is that really does help with your output when you're training in terms of the gym and when you're training with weights, because now you have more of a capacity. Like you're not going to gas out as hard. You're not going to potentially need as much rest between sets. I think one of the best examples of this, and it's not like I think that's the best way of working out, but when you look at CrossFit athletes, when you look at their output, when you look at the amount of volume that they're able to handle in the gym, they are the most fit when you look at any type of resistance training population. So if you can just take a clue from them and say, okay, well, how about if you see Mark doing things in between sets, he'll be on an assault bike, then he'll go back to doing an aspect of lifting. Or if you have some cardio that you do outside of your lifting to improve that capacity, you'll probably be able to, over time, handle more volume than what you're doing in the gym, which if you're doing a little bit more volume over time, probably going to gain a little bit more muscle over time too.
More adaptations. You said you don't think CrossFit is the best way to train. I think I know why you said that.
Yeah.
But why did you say that?
It's just for a majority of people, you will not be able to handle that intensity from going from high intensity cardiovascular output, then going to a Olympic type lift, or even just any type of like a kettlebell or whatever. You won't be able to go back and forth safely. If you were to do something cardiovascular, give yourself a little bit of time, then go to that resistance training movement with adequate load, meaning not too heavy, not too intense. You can do that safely, but most people want to push it. When you're in the gym, you want to go more intense. It's just the innate nature of what most people do. And when you end up doing both back to back very intensely, you just have a higher chance of getting injured. And when you're an elite CrossFitter, people who make it to elite levels of CrossFit have great genetics for that. It's like there's so many people that got injured on the way. Then there's the ones at the pinnacle who have actually managed to get there, where they're the most resilient. There's almost like an avatar for the elite CrossFit male and female, 5'9", 5'8". They generally look the same. Like you'll see those types of people at the top, and most people just won't make it there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I like the word capacity a lot. Nsima's mentioned capacity. I think it's cool to have the capacity to do that. So if someone's like, hey, let's do this Metcon, you could certainly do it. And you could say, that weight's a little bit heavy, but F it, like I'm down, like this is how we're partying for today, and I can do this, and I can get through it. But I agree with Nsima. I think once you start to like time stuff and then you're trying to do it competitively against somebody else, it can be amazing. It can be amazing, especially if you're paired well with somebody, but it also can be catastrophic. And I think that something that is missing sometimes from exercise is the execution. Your execution is so critical that even just the most minor detail being missed with your lifting can lead you to have serious injury and not be able to participate in any of fitness. So we do have to be careful. I'm not a super stickler for the rules in terms of always dialing everything in. Not everything has to be perfect. But when you're coming off of a 400-meter run and you're trying to deadlift 225, there's just a lot. Like for me, even though I've deadlifted a lot more, even though at my strongest I've deadlifted 766, if I was to participate in a workout where I was doing something in between and you wanted me to deadlift, I would probably select 30 or 40% of my max. And we don't usually see that in CrossFit.
Yeah.
They're usually picking like 70% of their max and trying to do a lot of repetitions with it.
Right. So the risk for injury is just much higher.
It can be dangerous, yeah.
Yeah. Going back to your weight loss, Mark, so what would you do differently now in terms of losing about 90 pounds, right? You went from 330, now you're at 220. There's been a lot of variations with your training, with your nutrition. There's a lot of people that are overweight that watch our channel that want to lose 60, 70, 80, 100 pounds. What advice would you do? Let's talk training first and then maybe get into nutrition. Because you have the powerlifting background. So that's always been a foundation for you. Now you're doing more you're still doing weightlifting, right? But then you also run every day. You told me at least 8 minutes, sometimes more. How much emphasis would you put on resistance training versus some of the cardio in terms of weight loss?
I wouldn't start in either place when it comes to losing weight for my journey, since I was already exercising. Exercise was not anything difficult for me to do. I was already lifting. I was already walking. So the thing that I would change if I could change my own path or my own route probably would have just been to eat less fat, because I really kind of fell into the keto pitfalls, 10, 15 years ago or so. Paleo and things like that. And I knew about fat, and I knew about the accumulation of calories, but each meal I might eat 4 or 5 times a day, and each meal would have 50, 40 grams of fat, something like that. So you're just it's just a ridiculous amount of fat. Also sometimes a ridiculous amount of calories. So that would have been the one thing I would have changed. And I'm not talking about like making sure I have no fat in my diet. Don't get me wrong at all. I definitely think that there's a place for it. But now when I start to think about, helping and assisting other people with their diets, I can't think of a lot of situations where much more than about 100 grams of fat is really a good idea. Unless it's, a much larger person and they have very specific goals. I would say, 100, maybe 120 would be the top end.
It does seem like a lot of people in the keto space tend to regain some of the weight that they lost because they are eating a ton of butter, a ton of bacon, a lot of excessive energy in the form of fat, because it is low carb, so that's been interesting. Nsima, you stay very lean. I mean, ever since I've been following you and so forth, you're probably 9% body fat most of the time, plus or minus. When it comes to carbohydrates, I would like to, for you to share your carbohydrate intake. Do you strategize it based around your exercise volume or intensity? How do you view carbs in terms of staying lean?
The way I viewed carbs over the years has changed a lot. When I was focused on bodybuilding back in like 2013, 14, 15, natural bodybuilding, I was eating 400, 500 grams of carbs a day. I was one of those people who'd eat multiple meals, and I also felt that I needed carbs to be able to perform. If I didn't have carbs before my workout, mentally I'd feel like, oh God, I can't handle today's workout. And that would actually get me in from the mental side. We started actually, I think, implementing some fasting in 2017. That's when I started messing around with low carb a bit just to kind of see what would happen. And I noticed with doing jujitsu and some days not having carbs, I didn't feel that beat up, or I was able to perform as long as I had adequate electrolytes and adequate calories. So over the years, I've maintained that low carb kind of diet for myself, where most days I won't have more than 150, 200 grams of carbs. Some days less, some days none. But it more so just depends on how I feel when I wake up during that day. And I know that might not help as many people, but I think the big thing to take away from that is if you're someone who eats a lot of carbohydrates, 300, 400, 500 grams a day, you might get something from lowering your carbohydrate intake for a bit, and then going to the gym and seeing how you perform. If you're someone who does a lot of like bodybuilding work which is inherently glycolytic, maybe have some of your carbs before you work out, a few hours before, because you may find that you do not need as many carbohydrates as you were eating to be able to perform well. So nowadays, again, some days I'll have no carbohydrates, but at most it'll usually be like 200 grams of carbs. I usually eat high fat, good amount of protein, and that's been one of the main ways that I've been able to stay lean over the years, because one of the things that happened by going lower carb is my appetite started to change a bit by implementing some time restricted feeding. So I only do long-term fasts a few times a year, but some time restricted feeding has kind of helped me to kind of get better at handling the feeling of hunger, because not all the time when I was actually eating was I truly hungry. So now I don't eat as often as I used to. And my just ability to work off of less carbs is just much better. I don't feel the need to eat excessive amount of carbohydrates.
I love that. I think a lot of folks in the mainstream bodybuilding or fitness space would say, well, Nsima, the reason why you're able to stay lean is because you're more in a calorie deficit. It has nothing to do with the carbs, because this fitness model eats brownies or cookies or, Pop-Tarts, right? What would you say to that?
So at the time when I personally, so again, all this is anecdotal, so take it with a grain of salt, but when I was eating a lot of carbohydrates and the times when I was prepping or when I was in my off season, I had to always track, because one of the things when you eat a lot of carbohydrates, not all those carbohydrates are going to be from oatmeal and potatoes. Yeah. Like, you're going to be eating some processed carbohydrates, which when you eat those types of foods, you can eat a lot of them. Or at least I should speak for myself. I can eat a lot of those foods without feeling full. So I was eating a lot of foods that I was getting in those calories, but I wasn't necessarily filling myself up. So I was tracking a lot to make sure I didn't go over my calories. And when I did get to a certain caloric point, I still felt really hungry. But when I transferred and I changed my diet to being a bit more lower carb, higher fat, higher protein, I haven't tracked since maybe 2017. I haven't tracked anything. And I eat very intuitively to keep my body weight within the, in the summer, I'll probably drop a little bit of weight. When it gets to winter, I'll maybe gain about 4 or 5 pounds. But it's extremely easy for me to maintain my body composition and progress over time, just because the eating style now it's more conducive to actually feeding my signals of hunger, right? You could say, oh, it's just because you're not eating as much processed foods, and you could still probably eat higher carb. But my performance, I don't know. I don't feel the need to eat that many carbs. I also don't feel good when I do. So again, I think a lot of athletes, they feel the need to eat that amount of carbohydrates for performance, but they really might not need that.
Right. I think it's fair to say that Nsima and I may have met in the middle from a dietary standpoint, because he was eating higher carb and I was eating higher fat, and I lowered my fat and brought my carbs up a little bit. And I think he did the kind of inverse of that.
And Mark, did you do any tracking with macro tracking when you were trying to lose weight from 330 down to 220?
I wouldn't say that I didn't do any, because, it's like, I'm not tracking the actual calories. I'm not usually looking at the package. I'm not usually going to type it into like an app or anything like that. But I have my own way of tracking, and that's the mirror and the scale. So to me, I always just thought it was foolish to like weigh the thing instead of just weighing yourself. Mm-hmm. It's like, if we had this bucket that you're pouring water in and out of all day long, and you go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, why would we measure the bucket that you're using to like pour stuff into? Why don't we measure the main bucket? And so I kind of always viewed it that way. Like, let's just weigh yourself. And if you are eating correctly and your goal is to lose weight, then the scale should be representative of that. And so I just try to keep it simple. But I would say that I did eyeball some stuff just to pay attention. Like, you need X amount of protein every day. And if you're trying to be keto, you might need X amount of fat and stuff like that.
Yeah. And you said look at how you feel, or look in the mirror. I think a lot of people don't look at like how their pants feel, or these more, I don't want to say subjective, because they are objective in a way. But if I noticed, like, when I really cut out the carbs, increased cardio, like, your pants are just looser, so encouraging that, trusting that intuition. So you get to this intuitive eating place.
I have a back fat mirror. I have a mirror that'll bounce off another mirror that like just exposes it all. So,
and do you think back fat is a good proxy for just?
For me, it is. Yeah. For me, I think it's a good. Look, if you're just looking at, if you have a mirror and it only shows like your upper body and your shoulders and what you work on all the time, then you might be like, oh, I'm jacked, but you might have a big old gut, right? So, I think, why not be able to look at it all and examine it and think about what you can work on.
I like that. Mark, and both Nsima, you have both mentioned protein. Protein is getting so much airtime. Gabrielle Lyon, Sean Baker, Paul Saladino have been talking about the importance of protein. We have literature now suggesting that we should aim for about 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. Are you more intuitive with your protein intake? And I want to hear your perspective, Nsima, as well. Do you eat more intuitively, or are you trying to hit a certain protein threshold based upon your body weight?
Yeah, I would love to say like, I try to get 200 or 250 or get, 1 gram per pound of body weight. I mean, that is the goal, but I really don't have an idea. I'm not really tracking it, but I have tracked stuff in the past, and it seems like, there's a really easy equation. Like, if you eat 2 pounds of meat approximately and you weigh approximately 200 pounds, you're getting about 200 grams of protein. Obviously, it depends on how lean the meat is. If the meat's not very lean, then you might need more protein. But I usually eat close to 2 pounds of meat and or some eggs and or some protein shakes and stuff like that. So I would just have to say that, like, on a daily basis, I would imagine that it would be really rare for me to be, under 180 or under 200 grams of protein. And I don't really actually like write it down or track it.
Yeah. And what about you, Nsima?
Protein's one of those things that it helps you understand how hungry you actually are, especially when you're getting in protein from food. Because, there's nothing wrong with protein shakes. I'll have protein shakes every now and then. But when some people get in or drink a lot of their protein, sometimes their appetite, they feel really hungry for other macronutrients. I'll get in usually at minimum 180 grams of protein. Usually it's going to be between 220, 230. But when I'm eating adequate protein, it's much easier for me to regulate my appetite because all of us here can eat a lot of food. We didn't get this big by not eating. So with that being said, I think protein is super important for a lot of people, especially trying to eat the amount of protein, like you said, 1.6 to 1.8 grams per kilogram, and even more at times. Just like if you're feeling hungry, if you're trying to diet, right? And you're like, God, I hit my calories for the day and I don't want to eat more. Just eat more protein. Have a protein shake or eat more protein. You're going to find that like, oh, okay, actually, I don't need to eat that much more food right now. Yeah.
I love that. And the fitness community really pushes chicken, tilapia, things like that. I mean, folks that consume content that we talk about are more red meat, from ruminants, lamb, bison, beef, things like that. When it comes to protein sources, do you find that any one is more satiating than the other? And why do you lean towards red meat, Mark?
I would really love to enjoy every meal that I have. And so, eating lean sources of protein, some lean sources of protein I really like. Like I like shrimp, I like scallops, certain seafood, but I don't really like chicken breast, so I'm not going to eat it. Most of the meals I have are things that I really look forward to. And also, most of the meals I have are also very nutrient dense, not just in macronutrients, but in micronutrients. So that's placed in high importance for me. And I just try to make sure I'm getting in. I think it's important. I think red meat is important just due to the micronutrients. I usually try to get grass-fed, grass-finished beef as much as I can.
Yeah. You?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's not much more to elaborate on there, but I would say it would be a good idea for more people to try to get in. I have this habit from when I was younger. My mom used to always give me sardines and organ meats, right? So me eating those types of foods now doesn't, it's not nasty to me, but I eat a lot of sardines. I eat a lot of mackerel, and I do eat a lot of red meat too. I don't eat the weak bird like chicken or tilapia. But what I have found is that tends to hit the appetite more. Obviously, salmon and sardines, et cetera, they have more fat. So you'll probably feel a little bit fuller, but try to get some of that in your diet because, EPA, DHA is super important too. So that'll be helpful for some people.
I break my fast usually with stuff like that. So like oysters, mackerel. I think fish is really important for people too.
Yeah. You said the weak bird. A lot of people think chicken is amazing, right? I have chickens for their eggs, but I don't eat chicken. Why did you say the weak bird?
It's just, okay. I'll say this. If you're on a low-fat diet, right, and you can't eat much red meat, go for, eat your chicken breast. But there's not much else from chicken breast other than protein. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but I don't eat low fats. I've done that before. Hormonally, it's not that great for me. So I eat, even when I diet, right, I'll still eat a little bit higher fat. But chicken, other than being protein rich, which is good, I don't see it being I don't see it being better than red meat in any way, right?
I personally think that counting calories works, while you're doing it. But I don't know how good of a practice it is long term. I think there's some people that can adopt it and utilize it, and it's not cumbersome to them, and they don't mind it. But I would rather be able to regulate my food in a different way. I'd rather be able to just eyeball stuff. I'd rather be able to ingest stuff. And if I'm eating whole foods, I'm eating a lot of protein. I'm eating some things that have some fiber in it. If I'm eating things that are delicious and really good, then my hunger hormones are taken care of. My cups are filled up. My macronutrient cup is filled up. My micronutrient cup is filled up. So a lot of people use that word work. This really works. It's going to work, Mike. I'm going to bring your calories down by 250 and we're going to make sure that you walk an extra mile every day and that's going to work. Well, it might work, 6 weeks, 12 weeks. Sounds like it's pretty successful, but let's talk about 6 years. Let's talk about 16 years. So I've been doing this for a really long time and I don't need to track calories and I don't need to carry Tupperware around with me. If it comes down to I have an option to eat something that's like not on menu. It could be a healthy option. It could be a chicken breast, or I have an option to eat something unhealthy. I'm just going to choose to fast because I have that as a strategy, and because I kind of hate the term fat adapted, but it does take people time to get used to a lower carbohydrate diet, and I've been used to it for a long time. So there's really I feel like a dieting ninja, right? Where I got all the tools in my tool belt to be able to handle any situation. Doesn't matter if I'm traveling, doesn't matter where I'm at. I'm not going to blame the hotel for my poor nutrition. I'm not going to blame my niece or nephew for my poor nutrition because it's their birthday. I can go into any establishment, anywhere, and handle myself just fine in terms of my nutrition because I could simply choose to just order some iced tea and not eat if I want to.
Which is a beautiful place. I think a lot of people are striving to get there, right? And I think we're really conditioned. I mean, if you look at kids' birthdays, right? Or school events, Valentine's Day, have to have treats. Birthday, have to have a treat, have to have a cake. Whatever the holiday is, Halloween. I mean, it's crazy. Like we're conditioned. We're like rewarding ourselves from an early age about food. So I think that's where the benefits of fasting come in so that you have the flexibility. Like you said, you're traveling, you're at a birthday party, Chuck E. Cheese, you're not going to eat at Chuck E. Cheese. Like, why would you? Why would anyone want to eat something at Chuck E. Cheese? Like, you can't blame Chuck E. Cheese for serving unhealthy food. Just don't eat it. Okay, pivoting a little bit more towards lifestyle. We were just outside working out in the sun. Both of you have incorporated exercise breaks in the sun because you recognize the importance that the sun has. How would you say this to my grandfather who knows nothing about nutrition, but is worried about his cholesterol, his osteoarthritis, whatever, that people should be getting more sun? What are all the benefits from that?
Well, I think one of the easiest encouragements is just to just go outside to relax. Just maybe can you have your morning coffee outside? Maybe where you live, it's too cold to do that. So that's understandable. Maybe, in the middle of the afternoon or on weekends, can you get outside, read a book? That's where I would start for most people, for someone like someone who's older. But getting outside is critical, and we're learning more about it all the time. It seems to me that, getting into nature, like getting into a forest, grounding, earthing, whatever you want to kind of call it, going to a beach, seeing the ocean, seeing, I think there's a reason why we can't really take a good picture of a beautiful skyline you can, right? You can take a picture, but it's just not the same as being there. It's almost near breathtaking when you get to see, Lake Tahoe and you're on a trail or something like that. It's a beautiful thing to see. And I think that's like wired into our body somewhere. So even beyond just the sun, which is the strongest magnetic field that we have, the sun does a lot of great things for us. But I think being outside, having the wind blowing, the trees outside, I think we're supposed to get all this stuff on us.
Yeah.
And then we go and we wash it off with, particular soaps that probably have stuff that's not really great for us. But I think that getting outside is really critical, and I think we're going to continue to learn more about it. And there's obvious things of like vitamin D, and there's all those other benefits, but we can't dismiss the mental health benefits. People talk all the time about mental illness, right? But they kind of use mental illness and mental health interchangeably. But there's a big difference between mental illness and mental health. Mental health is you are doing stuff every day so that you don't have mental illness. There's a lot of people, unfortunately, that suffer from mental illness, and they don't have it within them at the moment to do healthy things for themselves, so they don't have the illness any longer. And so if you're healthy at the moment, you need to get your ass outside and go for a run, go for a walk, whatever's going to encourage you to go out there and do it. Maybe just throw a football around with your kid or whatever it might be.
Yeah. So Nsima, you went outside, we took a break, and you were the first one to go outside, took your shirt off, you're jumping rope outside. I suppose you do that because you naturally feel better.
Just because I'm West African. We're in the sun. I'm joking, but go ahead.
But yeah, so you've noticed some of the benefits here. It seems like we're all learning more about how to enumerate the benefits of sunlight and all that. Do you do that just because you feel good?
Yeah, man. I think one of the tough things for a lot of people is if you work in an office job or, you work a normal corporate job, you get used to being inside a lot. You get used to being indoors. You get used to leaving your house, going directly to your office, staying there, maybe going outside for lunchtime, going back in your office, then going back home, maybe going inside because maybe you have to do stuff with the kids and it's tough. But I think for a lot of people, what they'll find is if they start trying to make a diligent effort to get outside, even if it feels like a little bit of a headache, they'll naturally start to feel a little bit better. And then they'll naturally start to seek that. Just like when you start eating better, when you start eating whole foods from eating a processed diet, you start naturally gravitating towards eating those foods because you're like, wow, this makes me feel better. If you make a concerted effort to get outside in the morning, get outside whenever you can, you'll start to seek that more. And at this point, for me, I'm at a point where I don't like being in here. I love podcasting. Don't get me wrong. I love doing this. But once we're done here, I go straight outside.
Feel a little trapped.
Dude. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in my early 20s, I worked in a gym. I worked in that type of job. And I got used to being indoors and training people indoors and going back home. And there are aspects of my health that I knew weren't great, right? But when I started making an effort to get outside more and do more things outside, things just started feeling better. So it's just one of those things where it's like, for me, I made that joke of being West African, but I mean, I talk to my mom and my sister about this all the time because, yeah, I'm 100% Nigerian, right? We're from over there where it's like there's sun out. People are outside. We are dark-skinned people. We like being outside genetically. And I think it's not just because of that, but there's an aspect of, for me, it's actually very important for me to make sure I get outside in the sun and not stay indoors all day because of where I come from. Yeah. But at the same time, for most people, if they start to do that, you'll start to enjoy it. So like nowadays, I do my work outside on my laptop. I will try to read outside. During the day, if I'm at home, I will go outside to my front lawn and I'll just do all my work outside just because I just feel so much better when I do that.
That's so awesome. I wish more people embrace this mindset. You know, there's just like we fear fat, we fear eggs for cholesterol. People are scared of the sun. They think that if they go outside, they need to lather up in sunscreen. They need to cover up and do all these things. And what's interesting about that is, you know, we hear about seed oils and linoleic acid and how that may increase risk of burning from the sun. I mean, I was blown away when researchers are actually trying to look at this to see if there is a phenomenon where when you cut out the consumption of industrialized linoleic acid enriched seed oils, that it changes the fatty acid composition and may reduce burns. I think it's incredible.
I would say, you know, a lot of skincare products have what in it? They have vitamin A, has retinol in it. So there's foods you can eat that help amplify the sun, and there's foods that you can eat that might make the sun more dangerous for you.
Yeah, fascinating. Speaking of sun, we know that light during the day is important, but in contrast, darkness at night is important. All of us here care about our hormonal health, recovery from exercise. What are you two doing to mitigate unhealthy light exposure in the evening?
Super easy. I'll throw on some like blue light blocking glasses, sometimes the yellow, sometimes the red, depending on, you know, what time of day it is. And then the other one is I have a sleep mask. I think Nsima has a sleep mask as well. He's actually the one that kind of recommended it to me. And now I just carry the thing around with me wherever I go. One little hack that I've been utilizing is that I will, and I actually do this sometimes just to like rest, and sometimes I end up taking a nap from it. But I'll put the sleep mask on and I'll leave my eyes open. And seeing like pitch black for a little bit, you'll be surprised. It does not take very long before you're out cold. Yeah. You're going to probably, most likely, start to fall asleep. So that's been a little hack for me in terms of how I'm getting, I guess, dark exposure.
That's awesome. I like the Blue Blocks sleep mask. What do you guys like?
Manta.
Manta. I gotta check that one out.
They're not a sponsor of our show or anything, but Manta's sleep masks are the most comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which one I have, but it does have like circles, and then like, I don't know, it keeps it like, it's not on my eye.
Yeah.
You know, some of them are like on your eye and you can't really open your eye with
it kind of falls off too. Blue Blocks has those little circles. So It's like, it really fits well. Nsima, so phone use in the bedroom. We know that the blue light affects testosterone, you know, libido, all that. What do you do with your phone, like for sleep?
You know, I mean, Mark's been doing this and Andrew's been doing this for a while, but I just literally keep it outside the room. And if I don't wake up to an alarm. So I try to get to sleep around the same time, so I wake up around the same time. So I just keep it outside the room, or I keep it far away from me in like the bathroom in the room. So that makes a difference. But I think all of us also we have red light bulbs. I know. I think you work with Bond Charge. I actually got those red light bulbs from them a long time ago, and that helps. One thing that's helped me a lot too, and I try to be diligent about it. I get a lot of steps each day, but I also try to get some. Try to walk at night. I've noticed that when I walk a little bit before bed, my sleep quality is a little bit better. That could be directly correlative or not, but I do notice every single time I do that, sleep quality is just a bit better. So that's one little habit I try to keep in.
I see you wear the Oura Ring.
Yeah.
Mark, do you do the Oura Ring or?
I usually track with a similar watch to what you have. What I'm kind of learning is that I think if I didn't track stuff, I think I'd be way better off.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not an analytical person by nature. And I think for me personally, I think it's kind of a waste of time. However, I am trying to like correct my sleep. But we do have to realize that these things, they do emit an electromagnetic field while they're tracking us. So although I don't think the Oura Ring does, I don't think the Oura Ring needs to be attached to like any Bluetooth or anything while you're sleeping. But most of the other devices do. And yeah, for me, I think I get maybe caught up in it. If I look at it at certain times of the day, it has a negative impact on me, which is crazy because I'm usually pretty good with stuff like that. But if I see, it will say my sleep score is like 60 and my readiness is 1. Then it's like, fuck. So that's why I don't have it on right now, because I just was like, you know what? I need to just throw this thing in the garbage.
Right. And rely more upon your intrinsic feelings.
I feel fucking awesome every day. I'm super excited about life every single day. I just don't want to sleep.
Yeah.
That's my biggest problem, but I don't know if that's a problem or not.
Some people just naturally need less sleep. I don't know. I mean, there's that whole chronotype. There's the bears and other things. That Michael Buse.
Power bear?
Yeah, something like that. So let's finish up with some training techniques. You guys use the slingshot has been great for the bench. Things like the hip circle to really engage the glutes. What are some tools that people can utilize, especially if they do home workouts, to help to incorporate more major muscles into their exercises?
I think a great place for some people to start would be to use an app. There's some apps out there that are awesome for exercise. I use Peloton. My wife has been doing that. And, normally she does it with the bike. But I think that people don't realize that you don't need a bike. You don't need a treadmill. You don't need hardly any equipment. They have thousands upon thousands of workouts in there. So when I travel, that's some of the stuff that I'll do with her. And I think it would, and you'd be shocked. There's a lot of detail on how to do the exercises. There's intermediate, there's beginner, there's advanced, there's all different kinds. So usually when my wife does it, she picks some advanced thing and I'm way behind. But I don't care that it takes me, because it usually takes me a while to like transition from one thing to another. And my wife's able to kind of bounce around. She's a lot more mobile than I am. But I think that's a really good place for some people to start. I would also say like it's not hard to just, have a kettlebell at the house. It's not difficult to have. And Nsima's probably going to talk about a jump rope. There's a lot of just easy things that you can purchase, and they're not really. There's a skill level to everything, right? But they're not really that hard to learn.
Yeah. There's a bunch of stuff with the nature of strength training, and strength training is awesome, but a lot of people fall into the habit, and it's not necessarily bad, but it forces you into one way of movement. Everything is sagittal, everything is bilateral. So it's like there's one way of moving. So I think if you can incorporate ways to add in rotation to the way that you train, and one of those ways that I do that is like with the rope. You saw me messing with the rope outside, and it may look a little bit funny to some people if they look up rope flow stuff, but when you look at those types of movements, you're getting a lot of spinal rotation in. You're also, when you do certain things, you're getting a lot of shoulder movement and a lot of wrist movement, a lot of action from the hips. So it's like, when you start adding in that type of movement, you will move better. And I think one thing that you see from people like bodybuilders and powerlifters is they're extremely stiff. They can't bend down. They can't rotate. They can barely extend and laterally flex their spine in different ways. And as you get older, you want to be able to maintain the function of all the ways your body moves. And I think the rope is one of the easiest ways to do that. And it's a tool that you can literally take anywhere. You could keep it in your car. You could go do it on a break. You could go do it at home. It's one of the easiest things you can add in, but it'll help you learn to start moving in all of those different ways. And then Mark mentioned the jump rope. And I think that's one of those great tools too, because again, as people start to get older, you notice that you'll see less and less people ever jumping, ever really getting off the ground other than like taking steps to walk. Or, some people maintain athleticism or sport, but the jump rope is one of the easiest ways to maintain your skill of jumping, which you don't see many 60 and 70-year-olds doing. And if you can just maintain that little skill, build the skill, and then maintain it for the rest of your life, you're now one of those rare people that are jumping when they're older. And you don't see that. So those are two things that I think are easy, very low hanging fruit for a lot of people. There's a little bit of a skill to develop it, but once you develop that skill, which isn't very difficult if you exercise snacks or microdose it as we talk about, long-term benefits are there.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you can do it anywhere, like you said, which is really cool.
Years ago, I created something called the Slingshot. The Slingshot is a supportive upper body device for bench press, push-ups, and dips. I think that these can be great fundamental upper body exercises. The Slingshot, in my opinion, works as double muscle. As you're lowering the weight, the Slingshot is stretching, so are your muscles. As you go to press, the Slingshot is contracting, and so are your muscles. So it works really well, especially for people that might have a slight shoulder injury, or maybe some people just aren't quite strong enough to really handle doing high rep push-ups and dips. My wife utilizes the Slingshot quite a bit, and she can do normal push-ups just fine, but she likes being able to do so most people can do double the amount of push-ups when they utilize a Slingshot. And then some people have the question of well, isn't it really helping you or isn't it cheating? And yes, it is helping you. That's the point of it. It's giving you assistance, but it's gentle and gradual assistance. We make different strengths of Slingshots. And so it's not assisting you so much that it takes away from everything. And really, if we just think about strength training in general and hypertrophy and stuff, what are you trying to do? You're just trying to send a signal to your body. I don't think your body cares if you were wearing an elbow sleeve or if you're wearing a belt to protect your back more. I think it just allows you to, the Slingshot in particular allows you to handle more reps, more weight, more sets, more overall volume in your workout. And that can equate to you getting stronger. That can equate to you staying safer. And it can also end up being something that aids you in some hypertrophy.
Which is good. I found the Slingshot really helps to engage my lats and back with pressing movements, which was hard for me to learn because I learned bodybuilding bench press. So getting into powerlifting where you want to incorporate a little bit more higher loads and more strength, incorporating the back was really good. But the hip circle has been really good for hip thrusts and even just body weight stuff at home. Just warming up, my daughter and I will use the hip circle all the time, for that. Because glute training, I think, is finally, we recognize that the glute should be one of your largest muscles in the body. So that's another thing that I let you travel with. Like at the airport, you're sitting. Involving the hip circle has been amazing, as well as the knee sleeves. I love those.
Yeah, it's just another product that just you can burn calories with it. You can get a little bit of exercise in. Exercise doesn't always have to be so hard. And part of the reason why I made some of the stuff that I did was to actually make exercise easier, to make it more inviting. Being a power lifter, I recognize how people could be no, that's the last thing I want to do. But what people need to understand about exercise is there are so many different types of exercise. There are so many different exercises, and there's so many different kinds of workouts that you can do. I think all the stuff that this is me personally, I think all the stuff I do nowadays is pretty fun. I do understand people being man, 3 sets of 10, every 90 seconds, and I don't really get to even go heavier. I got to kind of use the same weight, and I got to do perfect form, and it's got to be 4 seconds on the way down. That is slow progress. There's really no hype involved in any of that. I could see how it's not very exciting. Powerlifting, was always a little bit more exciting for me because you got to handle those kind of heavier weights to kind of test yourself, what you could do for a set of 3 and stuff like that. But I can even see how that is boring to people and how people can view that as being dangerous. But there's sleds that you can push. You can push the tank. You can go to a kickboxing gym. You can focus more on gymnastics. I mean, there's so much. There's such a movement of movement practices going on right now that I think is wonderful because it's just going to get more people to say, "Holy crap, I think I can do that." And that's exactly what I'd love to see for more people to see what other people are doing and saying, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. I think I could do that. There's no reason why I can't. There's no reason why I can't order those. What are those things we do the push-ups off of all the time?
Oh, the base blocks. They're a push-up trainer from them.
Yeah, there's like a base block product. You can do push-ups off of it. You can do like an L sit. Depends on your strength level and stuff. You can work on handstands with it, but don't think of exercise as just 3 sets of 10 of curls and 3 sets of 10 of squats. There's so much more stuff you can do.
Yeah, I love that. It seems ironic that their exercise is so much more accessible now than it ever has been, but we have the rates of obesity that we do. It seems because we need more discipline to actually take the time and be more intentional about the exercise. And I'm glad that you offer tools for that and the website for the Slingshot, Hip Circle, etc.
MarkBellSlingshot.com.
Amazing. And you guys do a great podcast. You've done hundreds of shows at this point.
Thousands.
Yeah, like 1,000 something, 1,060, 1,070 something.
Wow, that is so awesome. If folks are listening, what's the favorite show that you would advise them to listen to? Like, damn, this episode I learned it was a game changer. What show would that be?
We've had a lot of people have had a lot of a big impact on like what we do in our day to day. It's tough to kind of pinpoint one person.
Well, I think just because he talks a lot about things that you don't really hear most people talk about as far as exercise is Kador Ziani. Now, English isn't Kador's first language. We did a podcast with him in the old gym. But, he's a 52-year-old guy who is still dunking a basketball. And he just has movement practices that he goes through each day to keep his body healthy. And I think the reason why I mentioned that podcast, because there's tons of podcasts that we've been able to learn from. But Kador is someone where movement has become a habitual thing. We were just talking about how, exercise doesn't have to be this whole thing that you build up in your head to go to the gym, to go then work out. Kador, he's built it into a practice where he wakes up, he gets on the floor, he kind of brushes it's almost like he's giving his body the hygiene it needs. He does that throughout the day, right? And if we can start treating exercise not as like a gym thing, but more so just a thing we do throughout the day. Like while we were doing our last podcast, I had a towel underneath here and I was doing towel curls with my foot, right? There are these little things that you can bake into your day where they're no longer workouts. They're just physical habits that can help slowly move the needle. So instead, if you're doing multiple little things through the day, habits that you built versus one grueling 30 to 60-minute session and that's all you do, who's going to get further in the longer amount of time? It's probably going to be the person who's doing a little bit throughout their day. And you can do stuff at the office, et cetera. But Kador Ziani, I'd say, is a good conceptual podcast.
I love that. I'll check that out. Actually, one of the papers we talked about when we did our podcast was the importance of staying active throughout the day, not just doing one, as beneficial as one bout of exercise would be over the course of 30, 40 minutes, staying active throughout the day is very, very important. So I really appreciate you guys coming on the show, Mark and Nsima. The Mark Bell Power Project is in iTunes, Spotify, and back on YouTube.
Yeah, well, yep, we're everywhere.
Yeah. The sensors, man. It's crazy.
I want to mention just one extra thing before I forget, because I know Nsima mentioned like gaining a little bit of muscle mass, and I think it's an important feature of what we talk about and what we do is that both of us have lost some muscle mass initially. Initially, when you did jiu-jitsu, you lost some weight.
Yeah.
Initially, when I started running, I lost a little bit of muscle mass, and that's normal, and that probably should happen. That most likely will probably be most people's experience, that they're going to lose a little bit. You might lose a little bit of strength if you're out of the gym doing something different. You might lose some strength from losing weight, but you're going to be gaining capacities in a different area. You're going to be getting better at running. You're going to be getting better at jiu-jitsu. You're going to be getting better at, and there's also so many other benefits if you're losing weight. It's easy just to be like, oh man, my bench sucks. But also you might be getting better at body weight exercises, push-ups, dips, pull-ups, body weight squats, and so on.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And then you might feel better too. Be a little less red in the face, better energy. Yeah, I think looking at this through a holistic longevity perspective is good.
100%.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.